Welcome to The Explainer. Now, if you use a smartwatch, a fitness tracker, or pretty much any health app on your phone, then you absolutely need to hear this. We're diving into a new report that pulls back the curtain on the invisible agreements we all make when our personal data gets used for medical research. And frankly, it reveals some profound ethical gaps. This isn't just about privacy, it's about trust, transparency, and the entire future of digital health. So let's start with this question. Think about it for a second. It seems simple, right? But the answer is way more complicated and honestly, more concerning than you'd think. And this is not some hypothetical situation. It's the reality right now for thousands of people whose health data is fueling the next wave of medical innovation. The big problem? The rules for getting your permission, your consent, just haven't kept up with the tech. So first, let's just set the scene. We've got these digital health technologies, or DHTs, and they are everywhere. They are completely changing the game for research by collecting these huge streams of real-time, real-world data. And that is fantastic for innovation. But there's a huge disconnect. The consent process we're using is basically stuck in the past, and it's failing to address the very unique risks of our digital world. This right here perfectly illustrates the gap between the old rules and our new reality. We've gone from signing a one-time paper form to continuous 24/7 data collection from our devices. Data that used to stay locked down with researchers is now often shared with big tech companies and all sorts of other third parties. And the risks themselves have totally evolved. We've gone from worrying about simple physical side effects to these really complex digital threats like massive data breaches or even something called re-identification, where your supposedly anonymous data can be traced right back to you. It is a whole new ballgame. Okay, so to try and bridge this critical gap, a team of researchers decided to tackle it head on. They developed a brand new ethical framework, and their goal was to create what could be a modern gold standard for consent, building on the absolute latest guidance from the National Institutes of Health, the NIH. And they followed a really rigorous three-step process to do it. First, they just broke down the official NIH guidance into all of its core components. Next, they put that initial framework to the test against 25 actual consent forms from real-world digital health studies. And finally, based on what they found in the wild, they refined and expanded their framework, creating a truly comprehensive ethical blueprint. And the final framework really rests on these four key pillars. It covers everything from the absolute basics of your consent to the nitty-gritty details of the technology itself, like who the third-party vendors are. This robust new standard sets a really high bar for what ethical consent should look like. So the crucial question is, how well do current consent forms actually measure up? All right, let's get into the findings. The researchers took their new framework and used it to score those 25 real-world consent forms. And the results were pretty alarming. 0. That's the number. Out of 25 consent forms from actual studies, that's how many fully addressed all of the required ethical elements in the framework. Not a single one gave participants the complete picture. Not one. So you might be thinking, well, maybe some got close? Well, this was the score of the single best performing consent form, and that's only when you look at the mandatory items. That means even the top performer, the best of the best, was still missing more than a quarter of the essential information a person needs to give truly informed consent. And what's really interesting here is the pattern they found. The forms were generally pretty good at covering the foundational basics, things like the study's purpose and who to contact. But where did they consistently fail? In disclosing the risks that are unique to digital technology, like data breaches and access by third-party vendors. That's where they fell flat. But the investigation uncovered something even more significant. They found 4 ethically critical topics that were actually present in some of the real-world forms they looked at, but are completely missing from the official NIH national guidance itself. This is a huge deal, because it means even researchers trying to follow the rules would likely miss these important points. And these are the 4 blind spots. For instance, will you get a cut if your data helps create a profitable product? Can you actually see the data your own device is collecting during the study? And maybe most critically, can you ever ask to have your data deleted? These questions really represent a fundamental shift in what we, as participants, expect to know about our rights and the incredible value of our data. This quote from the paper just hits the nail on the head. It perfectly explains the danger. When consent forms don't even mention the tech companies involved, ethical responsibility gets passed on or outsourced without you ever knowing it. And this creates a massive blind spot where nobody seems to be clearly accountable for protecting your data. And that of course, just destroys the trust that is absolutely essential for this kind of research to even happen. So, what does all this mean for you, for researchers, and for the institutions that oversee this work? Let's distill this all down into a go-forward plan with 3 key takeaways. For institutions and the ethics boards, this is a crystal clear call to action. You have to update your templates to reflect this new digital reality. For the researchers out there, this is your chance to build trust by going beyond the bare minimum and being totally transparent about digital risks. And for all of us, as potential participants, it's a wake-up call to take control and start asking these tough questions. This isn't about slowing down innovation. It's about building the trust that's required to make that innovation both sustainable and ethical. And that really brings us to our final, critical question. The tools of science, of healthcare, they're evolving at this exponential rate. But the rules that govern them, they are lagging way behind. And closing that gap, that isn't just a challenge for researchers or regulators, it's one of the most important ethical challenges of our time. So the next time you strap on your smartwatch or open a health app, just ask yourself, do I really know what I'm agreeing to?